What's going on, everybody? I'm going to tell you real quick about the truck driver shortage myth and how it actually is and how it is. What is there a truck driver shortage? And no, but they say there is, and I'll explain who is they and why they're doing it, right? So with the B1 visa stuff in the news and Marco Rubio saying he's going to cancel out all of the B1 visas for truck drivers or not accept any new ones, and then people are saying, oh, it's going to cause a crisis because they're already short 80,000 truck drivers according to the ATA. Let me explain how this works, right? So every trucking company out there has to know what their cost per mile expense is, right? So how much does it cost them for every single mile that they travel? Every trucking company, doesn't matter whether you have one truck or 5,000 trucks. So a mega carrier, which is, say, any trucking company over 1,000 trucks, is going to have a much lower cost to operate than a smaller company, say 25 trucks. And the reason they can do that, partly, is because they can buy everything in bulk. They could buy trucks in bulk, tires in bulk, trailers in bulk, insurance in bulk, and fuel in bulk, maintenance in bulk. Everything they buy, they get a discount. Think about it. You go to these bulk stores where you can buy more product for less money than if you bought it singularly. It's the same thing in trucking. So all these big companies are buying everything in bulk. And the reason that they're saying there's a truck driver shortage is because, guess what? Equipment and trucks and tires and fuel is not the only thing they buy in bulk. No, they buy drivers in bulk and freight in bulk. And let me explain. First, the drivers, right? In order to keep their costs down and be competitive in the market, in order to go and get a large portion of the available supply of freight that's out there, they need to keep their driving costs low. Some of the biggest fuel costs, or some of the biggest costs for a trucking company, are your driver pay and your fuel. Fuel, you can't really control that. Driver pay, you can. And so what they go out and do is they can't go out and get these drivers that have experience, safe drivers, drivers that have been on the road for a long time and are good drivers. They can't go do that because it's going to push their cost to operate high. So what they need to do is they need to hire new drivers, people with inexperience that they could pay a low wage in order to keep their operating costs low, which means more profit for them. The problem is nobody wants to work in the industry. It's not a glamorous industry. It's a long time. You're away from your family and all that stuff. So they have all these trucks that they bought thinking they're going to get all these drivers, these young new drivers to come out, and they can't do it. So what do? They all join this trucking trade group called the ATA, or the American Trucking Association. This group purports to be representative of the whole trucking industry, but they're not. They're really responsible for a lot of the misinformation that comes out about the trucking industry and a lot of the regulations. The ATA then puts out press releases saying, we're 70,000 drivers short. We're 70,000 drivers short. There's 70,000 trucks not on the road, which anyone that works in the freight industry could tell you right now they're saying the number's 80,000. Right? Anybody that works actively in the industry knows that we have a supply and demand issue, and that's why rates are low. We have way too much capacity on the roads, which is driving freight rates down because, well, obviously you don't have to pay as much if there's 50 carriers bidding on your lane. Whereas if it's a poor lane and there's not a lot of capacity there, the rates go up, right? So in order to get the majority of this business that all these megas need to do and all the freight, they have to keep their rates lower than the smaller carriers who can't go to that level in order to swallow up that rate. And they need to get all that freight in order to pay for all the exorbitant costs of being able to buy everything in bulk. So they go to the ATA. The ATA puts out a press conference or a press release saying, hey guys, we're short 1,000 drivers. Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, they all freak out saying, oh, supply chain crisis, blah, blah, blah. And us, the federal taxpayer, we all start footing the bill to train drivers for these groups that end up spoiling the industry, right? Because our taxpayer dollars go to colleges to pay for all these CDL schools. Our taxpayer dollars go to approve and benchmark all of these apprenticeship programs that only the megas qualify for, where they put 18-year-olds behind the wheel, which is crazy that they're even putting 18-year-olds behind the wheel in interstate commerce, not interstate. So they do 6 months with a mentor, and then they're able to be cut loose on the road. It's crazy, but that's the reason why the ATA keeps saying that there's a truck driver shortage, because one, they have to. Their members are all the megas that are the ones that need the drivers. the quality drivers, the ones with experience, aren't going to work for the megas because, frankly, they don't make enough money because, again, the megas have to keep their operating costs low in order to go get all of the freight in order to pay all of their exorbitant bulk purchasing bills. So that's why, like, a lot of people get super upset because they'll say there's a truck driver shortage. What we don't have, we actually need capacity off of the market. We need more trucking companies to go under, unfortunately, as bad as that is to say, in order to get some equilibrium in the freight rates. Because right now, freight rates have been stagnant. They're not high. Companies are on the verge of going bankrupt, and you're not seeing the megas go bankrupt. You're seeing the smaller companies, the 50 to 100 truck fleets or the 50 to 500 truck fleets that are trying to keep up with the megas, that are bidding lanes low, but then they realize that their costs, just like everything else in the world, their costs continue to rise. And as they need more drivers, they need to start paying their drivers more to keep up with the market. But they can't do that because, well, it pushes their costs high, and then they end up imploding and the companies end up folding. That's why we had all the bankruptcies a couple of years ago. That's why we're starting to see them again. And now you're starting to see the narrative that there's this truck driver shortage. Well, how is there a truck driver shortage when all these companies are going belly up? The key is there's no truck driver shortage. It's a myth that they say in order to keep rates low, in order to put unqualified drivers in the seats, in order to keep their operating costs low so they can then force smaller companies out of business. That's at least my take on it. What are your thoughts? Comment below.